The numbers on my laptop screen blurred as I stared at the credit card statement I'd accidentally opened. Owen's card, not mine. My hand had been reaching for my morning coffee, but now it hovered frozen in mid-air as my brain tried to process what my eyes were seeing. Tiffany & Company, $18,400. Cartier, $22,000. Four Seasons, Miami, $3,200. All charged last month. All while Owen had told me we needed to tighten our belts. The coffee went cold as I scrolled through 6 months of charges. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left just the shell. I heard his key in the front door, home early from his client dinner. And something crystallized in that moment. The business trips that got longer. The late meetings that smelled like perfume. The way he'd started asking me to handle his paperwork so he wouldn't be bothered with details. "Blair?" Owen called from the hallway. "You here?" I looked at the screen one more time. The restaurant charges were always for two. The jewelry purchases had delivery addresses I didn't recognize. And there, buried in the fine print, a recurring monthly transfer of $12,000 to something called SM Consulting Services. I closed the laptop with a quiet click. My name is Blair. I'm 38 and I'm a commercial real estate developer. This is the story of how I learned the difference between building a home and funding a lie. To the outside world, I was Owen's supportive wife, the one who smiled at charity galas while he networked, who handled the boring business stuff while he played golf with potential clients. What they didn't know was that I owned Meridian Development Group, one of the largest luxury property firms in South Florida. I'd built it from nothing over 12 years, starting with a single duplex renovation and scaling up to 23 properties worth $340 million. Owen had the title of Chief Brand Officer. I'd given it to him 3 years into our marriage when he couldn't hold down his sales job at a tech startup. He needed to feel important, and I needed someone to handle the public-facing events I hated. It seemed like a fair trade. I'd handle the acquisitions, the financing, the actual work, and he'd cut ribbons and shake hands. But somewhere along the way, Brand Officer had become Unlimited Expense Account. The $15,000 monthly stipend I paid him was supposed to cover his lifestyle. Instead, I'd been covering 2 lifestyles without knowing it. I spent the next week doing what I do best, research. While Owen went to his business dinners, I hired a forensic accountant. While he took his weekend golf trips, I installed monitoring software on our shared cloud account. While he kissed me goodbye each morning, I was building a case that would hold up in court. The forensic audit came back on a Tuesday. My accountant, a woman named Patricia, who'd worked with me for 8 years, called me at 11 p.m. "Blair, you need to see this in person." Her voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news. I met her at her office at midnight. She spread the documents across her conference table like a crime scene investigator laying out evidence. "It's not just personal expenses," she said, sliding the first report toward me. "He's been using company funds." The marketing budget, the one Owen controlled, showed a pattern of transfers to SM Consulting Services. Same initials as Sienna Mitchell, the 26-year-old art consultant Owen had introduced me to at a fundraiser last year, the one who'd gushed about how lucky I was to have such a visionary husband. When Owen introduced us, he'd mentioned she was working on a project in the Meridian Tower, information that would come back to haunt him when I saw that same address on his credit card delivery records. "There's more," Patricia said, pulling out another folder. "Your mother-in-law is an authorized user on your Amex Platinum. She's been spending about $18,000 a month." I looked at the charges. Olivia had been shopping like she'd won the lottery. Spa days, designer boutiques, country club fees for a membership I didn't know existed. And half the charges showed a second cardholder, Sienna Mitchell. My mother-in-law was shopping with my husband's mistress, using my money. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I looked at Patricia and said, "I need you to prepare a complete asset protection strategy, and I need you to do it by Friday." Over the next 2 days, Patricia and I built an airtight plan while I went through the motions of my normal routine. By Wednesday evening, everything was in place. The gallery opening was on Thursday night. Some artists show at a new space in Wynwood. Olivia had mentioned it casually over Sunday dinner, saying she was taking a friend and might use the card to pick up a little something. She'd said it the way wealthy people do when they're spending someone else's money, with that breezy entitlement that assumes the bank account is infinite. I arrived an hour after the event started. Wearing the black Armani dress Owen always said made me look too severe. I wanted severe. I positioned myself on the gallery's upper level, where I could see the main floor through the steel railings. There they were. Olivia in head-to-toe Chanel, gesturing dramatically at a sculpture. Next to her, Sienna, laughing at something on her phone, looking bored with the art but very interested in the price tags. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With 3 taps, I activated the security protocols Patricia had set up. Every card connected to my accounts, Owen's credit cards, Olivia's authorized user card, the company cards, all flagged for fraud prevention, frozen solid. Then I called my property manager. "The penthouse at the Meridian Tower," I said, "the one Owen's been using as a model unit. I need you to serve an eviction notice tonight. No, he doesn't have a lease, because I own the building." I watched from above as Olivia approached the counter, Sienna trailing behind her. Olivia pulled out the platinum card with a flourish, tapping it against the glass counter. "We'll take this piece," she announced to the gallery assistant, pointing at a painting priced at $5,400. "Have it delivered to?" She glanced at Sienna, who provided an address I recognized as the Meridian Tower penthouse. The gallery assistant was young, professional, wearing the kind of fixed smile people have when they work on commission. She took the card, swiped it, and frowned at the screen. Swiped again. The smile faltered. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This card has been declined." Olivia's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. "That's impossible. Run it again." The assistant tried 3 more times. Each decline made Olivia's face redder, her voice louder. "This is a platinum card. Do you understand what that means?" "Ma'am, it's showing as frozen for suspected fraud," the assistant said, backing up slightly. "You'll need to contact your bank." I watched as other gallery patrons turned to stare. Olivia's performance of wealth was collapsing in real time, and she couldn't understand why the machinery had stopped working. In her mind, the money was somehow hers. She'd spent it so freely for so long that she'd forgotten who actually owned it. Sienna stepped away, pulling out her phone. I could see her texting frantically. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was Owen. "Mom says there's a problem with the card. Fix it. This is embarrassing." I typed back. "It's not a glitch. It's a foreclosure." I didn't wait to see his response. I left the gallery through the back exit and drove to the Meridian Tower, where I knew Owen was hosting what he'd called a client appreciation event in the penthouse. The same penthouse I'd spent $2.3 million renovating, the one that was supposed to be our showcase property. When I walked into the building, my property manager, Marcus, was waiting in the lobby with a sheriff's deputy and my lawyer. "They're all upstairs," Marcus said. "About 40 people. Caterers still setting up." We took the elevator to the penthouse. I could hear music and laughter before the doors opened. I used my master key, the one Owen didn't know existed, and walked in. The conversation died in waves as people noticed us. Owen was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, champagne glass in hand, Sienna next to him. When he saw me with the deputy and lawyer, his expression went from confused to panicked in seconds. "Blair, what are you doing here?" He set down his glass and started toward me. "This is a work event. You can't just—" "Mr. Owen Bishop," the deputy stepped forward. "We're here to serve you with an eviction notice for unauthorized occupancy of this property." "Eviction?" Owen's face flushed red. "This is my apartment. I live here." "No," I said, my voice steady. "This property belongs to Meridian Development Group. You're not on the lease because there is no lease. You've been living here without authorization. You have 1 hour to vacate before we file criminal trespassing charges." The room had gone completely silent. 40 people watching Owen Bishop, the man who'd spent years playing real estate mogul at my company events, realizing he owned nothing. "Blair, stop," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "You're making a scene. These are important clients." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. "They're not your clients, Owen. They never were." Sienna had pressed herself against the window, her eyes wide. "Owen, you said you owned this place." It's complicated," Owen stammered. "Blair, please, Let's talk about this privately. We'll talk tomorrow, I said, in my office, with lawyers present. I turned to the guests, who were all staring. I apologize for the disruption. The bar is closed. Please exit through the main entrance. People scattered, grabbing coats and purses, avoiding eye contact. Within 10 minutes, the penthouse was empty except for Owen, Sienna, Marcus, and me. The locks are being changed in 45 minutes, I told Owen. Take what's yours, leave what isn't. How am I supposed to know what's mine? Owen said, his voice cracking. You paid for everything. Exactly, I said. So take your clothes. Everything else stays. I walked out, leaving him standing in the middle of the empty penthouse, surrounded by furniture he'd never paid for, in a home he'd never owned. The next morning, Owen showed up at my office. My assistant tried to stop him, but he pushed past her desk and barged into my office. He looked like he'd slept in his car. Rumpled suit, bloodshot eyes, 2 days of stubble. Where's my money? He demanded, slamming his palms on my desk. The stipend didn't transfer. My cards don't work. What did you do? I closed my laptop and looked at him. For 5 years, I'd been married to this man. I'd paid his bills, funded his lifestyle, given him a job title he hadn't earned. And now, standing in my office, he genuinely believed he was entitled to keep taking. Sit down, I said. I'm not. Sit down. Something in my voice made him drop into the chair. I turned my laptop screen toward him. This is a forensic audit of our company's marketing budget for the past 18 months. See this line item? SM Consulting Services, $214,000 transferred over the last year. Owen's face went pale. I know who SM is, I continued. Sienna Mitchell, your girlfriend. You've been using company funds, my funds, to pay for her lifestyle. She does legitimate work, Owen said weakly. She consulted on the art installations. We haven't purchased art for any property in 2 years, I said. This isn't consulting. This is embezzlement. The silence stretched out. Owen stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I could have you arrested right now, I said. Grand theft, fraud, embezzlement, that's 10 years minimum. Blair, please. His voice broke. I made a mistake. I'll fix it. I'll pay it back. With what money? I asked. You don't have any money. You never did. I slid a folder across the desk. Divorce papers, uncontested. You waive all claims to spousal support, property division, and company equity. Owen looked at the papers like they might catch fire. And if I don't sign? Then I call the district attorney, and instead of leaving with a severance check, you leave in handcuffs. Severance? $20,000. That's it. Sign the papers, take the money, and disappear. His hand shook as he picked up the pen. He signed without reading, his signature barely legible. When he finished, he stood up slowly, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. How could you do this? He said quietly. How could I? I stood up, facing him across the desk. I gave you everything, Owen. A job you weren't qualified for, a lifestyle you couldn't afford, 5 years of second chances. And you stole from me. You cheated on me. You made a fool of me. I loved you, he said. No, I said. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. He walked out, leaving the signed papers on my desk. I watched him go, waiting for some feeling. Sadness, relief, anger. But there was nothing. Just the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved. I called Patricia immediately and instructed her to process the severance payment. Despite everything, I wasn't vindictive enough to pursue criminal charges. I just wanted him gone. The check cleared his account within 24 hours, and Owen left Miami 2 days later. An hour later, Olivia arrived. The security guard made her wait in the lobby, standard protocol for non-employees. When she finally made it up to my office, she looked nothing like the woman who'd been commanding gallery assistants the night before. She looked old, scared, diminished. Blair, she said, her voice shaking. Owen told me, please, you can't just cut us off. We're family. Family, I repeated. Olivia, you spent 5 years telling everyone I wasn't good enough for your son. You called me Owen's little project at parties. You told me my background was unfortunate. I was trying to help you fit in, she protested weakly. You were spending my money while insulting me, I said. You've been an authorized user on my credit card for 3 years. You've spent over $650,000. Did you ever once thank me? Did you ever once acknowledge where that money came from? She looked down at her hands. I thought Owen said the business was doing well. I thought it was family money. There is no family money, Olivia. There's my money, which I earned, which you spent. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. I can't afford my apartment. I can't afford anything. I handed her a single piece of paper. She looked at it, confused. What is this? A list of apartments in your budget, based on your pension, which, by the way, is more than many people have. These are in Fort Lauderdale, she said, horrified. That's where you can afford to live, I said. You're not homeless, Olivia. You're just not rich. There's a difference. You're really doing this, she said, tears starting to fall. You're really cutting me off. I'm not cutting you off, I said. I'm stopping payment on services not rendered. You can visit Owen in his new studio apartment. I'm sure you'll find ways to economize together. Security escorted her out. I watched her leave, clutching her list of budget apartments, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. 6 months later, I stood in the main hall of a 1925 Art Deco building in downtown Miami. I'd purchased it for $3.2 million, a steal for a property most developers had written off as too expensive to restore. But I saw what they didn't. The original terrazzo floors, the brass fixtures, the soaring ceilings that just needed someone to care about them. This wasn't going to be another luxury condo development. This was going to be the headquarters for the Meridian Foundation for Architecture, a scholarship and mentorship program for young women entering commercial real estate and development. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, exactly 90 days after Owen signed the papers. Florida's mandatory waiting period for uncontested divorces. Owen had taken his severance and moved to Tampa. According to my lawyer, who'd heard through the real estate network, Sienna had broken up with him within 2 weeks of the penthouse eviction once she realized he was actually broke. She'd moved on to a nightclub promoter with actual money. As for Olivia, she was working part-time at a garden center in Fort Lauderdale. She'd tried calling Owen a few times in the first month, but he'd stopped answering. Turns out that mother-son loyalty only lasted as long as there was money to spend. I pulled up the architectural renderings on my tablet. The building would have classroom space, design studios, a library, offices for mentors, everything I'd wished I'd had when I started out at 24, working 2 jobs and taking night classes to get my real estate license. This was my revenge, not destroying Owen, but building something that had nothing to do with him. I'd stopped being the invisible bank for people who drained me and started investing in people who would actually create something meaningful. I put the tablet away and looked around the empty hall. Dust motes floated in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through the tall windows. The building smelled like possibility, plaster and old wood and the future. The blueprint had changed, and this time, my name was the only one on it. If you've ever had to rebuild after betrayal, or if you're in the middle of tearing down something toxic right now, share this story. Hit that like button, drop a comment about where you're watching from, and subscribe for more real talk about taking your power back. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.